Well, since we want to give folks lots of time to have conversations throughout this next hour, we'll go ahead and start doing some introductions, and hopefully everybody will be signed in by the time we get into our breakout rooms. So welcome everyone to Beyond Constraints, looking critically at and moving beyond the TPEs. And my name is Rosemary Wrenn. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a supervisor and lecturer at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and also over at Cuesta Community College. And do my co-presenters want to?
Sure. I'm Heather Ballinger. I'm a supervisor, lecturer, and program leader at Cal Poly Humboldt. My pronouns are also she, hers, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you all had a good lunch. Matt Wallace, UC Davis, lecturer and supervisor.
All right. So, and thank you all for joining us today. If everyone wants, it looks like several folks have already put in the chat hello or good morning. If you want to drop in the chat your name and where you're coming from, we'd love to have you share that with us. And I'm going to go ahead and share screen here and get it into that. And so this is, again, this is our workshop on Beyond Constraints, looking critically at and moving beyond the TPEs. And what we were hoping to do is to continue the conversation about how we can coach and guide our candidates to look beyond the TPEs as a checklist and start to bring in more of the social justice and the anti-bias and anti-racist pedagogy that we're hoping they will explore as they develop their teaching styles. So our agenda it's pretty simple. We actually are hoping that we will not be talking very much, but that you will all be able to have conversations in breakout rooms. First, we're going to take a look at and talk about what are our initial understandings and questions about the TPEs. How all the different schools have very different approaches to how much they focus in on the details within these. And so we thought it'd be a great chance for folks to share their experience and learn from one another. And then we'll go back into the same groups and look at how can we really prompt some more critical conversations with our candidates about the TPEs. And I know that the workshops this morning will probably greatly inform the conversations that we're about to have. And so I know that we have done this in the other workshops that I've been in this morning, but this is something that has become integral to my personal practice as a lecturer. And in any of the gatherings that I facilitate or participate in, I appreciate understanding the land that I'm on. And in one event, someone said, oh, well, land acknowledgements are just really performative. They're just, they're virtue signaling. And I took that pretty intensely because I know the land I'm on and I'm in community with people whose ancestors have been on this land for quite some time. And so I think when we're working with our candidates and we're in these classrooms with young children or teenagers in the high schools, is what does it mean beyond the words that we say? What does it mean to be in partnership with the people whose land we're on? And I happen to be on Northern Chumash land. And right now the community is petitioning for the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, which is the first marine sanctuary that has been put forth by a tribe. And that's my friend Violet right there. And this is the land and the sea that she is trying to protect through this effort. And so when we talk about land acknowledgements going beyond words, it's getting into partnership. How can we support the people whose land we're on and build community that way? And so that's just something I wanted to bring to your awareness, is that once you find out whose land we're on, think about how you can connect with them. And I think it's been mentioned that this is a really great resource, this nativeland.ca. And then I I also found this guide to creating a land acknowledgement, and a lot goes into it. And it's really, it's actually really complicated to try to develop that because of the ways that different peoples have looked at whose land they're on, and our idea of ownership is very different than a lot of the indigenous peoples of our continent. So just a little bit more in case it's something that is new to you or you didn't really understand what was going on with them. And this is the one that we've developed in our community. And I happen to live on the Northern Chumash had quite a large territory, as I think a lot of us know. And so both the schools that I work at and my own home are on these lands. So I'm going to turn it over to Matthew to talk about our norms for this workshop.
Sure, thank you. So as we engage with each other and with our ideas this afternoon, we thought we'd offer these norms as ways to help us all get the most from our time together. So we hope that you all stay engaged, which is easier said than done. I don't know about you. I'm working from home today. I have a preteen who I need to make sure is making good choices in the other room. I have a cat over here who sometimes asks for attention. So hopefully all of you can, in your own way, find a space that minimizes all these distractions and find ways to stay here, present. Speak your truth. And we think this is particularly important because we all have a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge, a lot to contribute. So please don't hold back. It's really important that you speak from where you're coming from your experiences, your truth. And know that sometimes that can be uncomfortable, and you should expect to experience discomfort when you're really pushing yourself and stepping outside of your comfort zone. And that's really important because I think we'd all agree that that's where a lot of the learning and growth comes from, when we push ourselves to feel uncomfortable, to be outside of our comfort zones. And that can happen in lots of different ways, whether it's speaking up, whether it's entertaining ideas, whether it's, well, in lots of different ways. So however that looks for you, I encourage you to do so. And we only have a limited amount of time together, so expect and accept that we may not be able to bring things to closure today. And that's okay, but I hope it doesn't end here. I hope all of you continue to mull over ideas and think through things in ways that work for you and your context.
All right, and then the last sort of intro slide that we have is just related to this idea, kind of what Rosemary and Matt touched upon, is we're entering the spirit of inquiry and really hoping that we're able to lead and think about this idea that we can create knowledge and bring about more creativity and understanding through this inquiry together. So we're on a journey, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to join us and contribute your own thoughts and understanding to the TPEs and the supervision practice as well. So the first thing, the title of this presentation and hopefully the work that we're really going to be doing here is thinking about the TPEs and putting them into a critical context. And so, what the TPEs are is their teacher performance expectations. They were recently revised in 2016, and then literacy TPEs have been recently added as well. And I'm sure you're all aware of those, and all of we're going through accreditation soon. So all of our accreditation syllabi have been marked, and all of our supervision documents have really clear notations of when and where we're communicating to our candidates where the TPEs are located and sharing with them how they're part of a, like the slide says, this body of knowledge for beginning teachers. And so hopefully conversations with your candidates happen organically, but I also think that we have an opportunity here to take a critical lens at the TPE while also acknowledging that they are research-based and nationally aligned, and they're starting a professional practice with new educators related to transitioning into the process of clearing their credential. And as you know, there's these are linked, although maybe we want to put the link in the chat for the placemat, or we have, we have the placemat that Rosemary, you had in the resources document for this talk, but there's a placemat for the TPEs. It's a very easy kind of quick reference. So you can see that there are 6 main domains, and then there's detailed substandards. And what we were noticing when the 3 of us were having our emergent conversation about the TPEs and trying to connect them to critical understandings and social justice practice is that some of them might seem more obvious and lend themselves towards critical reflection or critical conversations that we have with our candidates. Others, I think that it might not seem as obvious. And so maybe some of those will highlight in the breakout rooms that we go into, but all of them have space for this critical inquiry, which we're kind of highlighting in the previous slide with our quotations, and this kind of understanding of pulling apart some of these TPEs and seeing how we can help our candidates and supervisors critically reflect on how to incorporate these into our practice.
So in that spirit, we'd like to pose the following question, and we're not going to ask you yet to share anything or respond in the chat, although you're welcome to. But we really just like you to think for a moment. Take some time to yourself to think about what are some ways that we can guide our candidates to really think about the TPEs through a social justice lens. And as Heather mentioned, some of them lend themselves, they're pretty obvious, but others not necessarily so. Or maybe some are just outright missing something that's more equitable or social justice oriented. So how might we guide our candidates, the teacher candidates we're working with, to think about all of these TPEs through a lens of justice and equity and inclusion? All right, that was fast. On to the breakout, our first breakout room. So, oh, now we're going back. Oh.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Do you want to go back to just on that one question?
No, it's quite all right.
Okay.
We'll go here. So now what we'd like to do is invite you all to a breakout room. And in the breakout room, we have the following questions here that we'd like to ask you to discuss. I'd also add, maybe first, when you join your breakout room, just take a moment to introduce yourselves to your group mates. Maybe you know folks from there, but maybe you don't. So just take a moment to say, hey, and then you can dive in with these 3 questions that you see here. And we'll add them to the chat, yes?
Sure, we'll do that. And then I'm putting a link to the slides in the chat because we have typed out the TPEs and each group is going to have one batch of TPEs to look at. So in case you don't have them handy right next to your desk, you can check them out on the slides. And then I'm also going to be putting in a link to a document where we can start recording some of our thoughts on the TPEs.
Yeah, I was thinking, Rosemary, one thing that might not be clear to participants yet, but I have created 6 breakout rooms that represent the 6 domains. So whichever breakout room you go to would be the TPE of that your group will focus on. So if you're in breakout room number 1, you'll be focusing on TPE number 1 and looking at engaging and supporting all students in learning, and trying to address and answer, hopefully taking notes for our mutual understanding about what your conversation was. And we'll have facilitators popping into, between the 3 of us, since there's 6 TPEs, we've assigned 2 TPEs to each of us. So if we're not in your breakout room in the beginning, we'll be coming in after we've checked in with our first sort of assigned group, if that makes sense. And then if you could take notes on your TPE that you end up in, the group that you end up in, based on your breakout room number. If you would take notes into the Google Doc that is provided in the chat, then when we get back together, we'll have a chance to sort of share out on what your group TPE conversation looked like, because you'll only be talking about one of those 6 main domains. And then we'd like to have an opportunity to share out what the questions are or the key takeaways were regarding that conversation. Okay. Any questions about that? I think I'm gonna put people in, I'm gonna create the breakout rooms now. All right, hope that went well. It always seems a little awkward when we have to pull people out mid-sentence in a breakout room. And if anyone has come to a conclusion about how to make that less weird, I would love to hear about it. So in the groups that I was in, 3 and 4, the conversations were really rich, but what I noticed was one of the things that I noticed was people have a tendency, and I do this as well, where I table well, in my experience as a history social science supervisor, it's a little bit different in math. And so sometimes I think, and maybe this is just my secondary brain on, we have a tendency to, I don't know, qualify some of the comments that are being said, but that I think I saw also a lot of themes that could be shared across disciplines as well. So hopefully you all got to that place as well. Looking through the conversations on the Google Sheet that we're looking at, I'm wondering if we could all share out by group, and I think it makes the most sense to go by order of chronologically, I guess, or maybe what is it called, Matt, when it's in number? It's not chronological.
Numerically.
Numerical. Thank you. Geez. In numerical order, and have TPE 1 share out kind of a little bit about their conversation that they had and the main takeaways from it.
Sure. Well, I can, I was part of group 1, so I could start maybe with the initial understandings, and then I can throw it over to another one of my colleagues. So one of the things that kind of came up were that we had idea that it really was focused on around increasing, promoting, or improving issues around diversity. And we were thinking about diversity in a number of ways, right? Relating to supporting emerging bilinguals, increasing access, thinking about universal design for learners, so our neurodiverse learners, and then also culturally responsive instruction and curriculum. And so broadly, we felt that this really meant that we wanted to ensure that all of our learners had meaningful access to materials in the curriculum and the lessons and activities that teacher candidates create. A big part of this is really getting to know your learners, who they are, the assets that they come with. And then related to that, capturing students' interests, again, making sure the curriculum is relevant and engaging and accessible for them. And then another thought was that in many ways, whether it be implicit or explicit, the idea of social justice or critical reflection really does seem to be threaded and infused throughout TPE 1.
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. How about TPE 2?
I could start, and then maybe Christina can go. We talked a lot about building in the classroom, building the culture of, acceptance, trying to find commonalities to create engagement for kids, for them to feel like there's a safe environment in here, and one of the things that was brought up is if you start teaching the character ed, specifically kindness, to make sure it goes all the way up through secondary, because it seems that it creates a safer environment when you have an atmosphere that the kindness is taken to heart, and that everyone does it. It makes it more accepting for the students.
Great, thank you. Did anybody from TPE2 want to share anything more? That sounded like a good review of that one. How about TPE?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was unmuted. I didn't realize. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I like the idea of starting locally to globally, and because you have to first start with yourself and then your classroom and others, and then on throughout, and also reflection, which we all recognize that most teacher candidates need to, build on. And then transferring that to the students to allow them to reflect, and the environment of a safe space and kindness. I like that Janae, I hope I'm saying that right, wants it to be a continuum throughout the school, throughout the grades, and then now hopefully throughout life. And to look at self-belief and work toward acceptance. One of the examples was from Prison with History of Slavery, and recognizing that it's not just the one type of slavery that's often recognized here in the United States, that consignments and such, the Irish, Norwegians were mentioned, where you were, oh gosh, Janice, what was it called? Where they had to work it off.
I think the word's indentured.
Indentured, thank you. Thank you. And so all of those things, but the questions I started to come up with, because we ran out of time. You guys never give us enough time. We want to keep talking. Like we need some, what are some practices that worked, effective environment, strategies to promote trust and acceptance. All of those have to be built upon before you can really create that sense that you want to build. That's all.
Great, thank you, Janae and Christina. I appreciate that. I started in TPE 3, and we had a great conversation. But does somebody else from that group want to kind of share out the takeaways from that conversation? We started talking about content versus kind of constructivist ideas of putting content together. But did anybody else want to add to that?
Heather, you should probably add scientific inquiry.
Yes, we definitely talked about, the, well, I think it was Amy who was in the group with us, was mentioning the national science standards. And so we talked a bit about the difference between, or the focus on, content standards versus the TPEs, and how those kind of sometimes come together in our supervision and sometimes are kind of at odds with each other. And so the conversation between content versus curriculum did come up. Amy, did you want to add something to that part of that conversation? I thought you were very articulate about that as well.
Oh, thank you. I think it showed up in the chat because Nicole kindly put it in there. But it's kind of just, I'm wondering about the idea of, as we look at TPE 3, helping our candidates envision subject matters such as, visual performing arts. If visual performing arts is a verb, and if science is a verb, how might that affect how we look at each of those TPE components then? And might that kind of open up some space for students to be more not only active, but to be able to bring themselves like more into the content area? So instead of this like repository of knowledge, or facts that needs to get covered, what if those what if subject areas are instead just actions that we're taking? Yeah.
Can I jump in here? I wasn't in this room, but I want to continue on with what Amy's talking about. And this is one, I think so much of teacher preparation lands right here. And there's a super huge focus on content. And I think it's really important for our candidates to understand the various disciplines. But I don't know about you, but education is very different from when I got my credential and there was no internet to use to find information. And so I think that this TPE does leave room for the how of teaching also. And I think it's really important that we be looking and maybe think about how we can bring in the more affective elements of content And because our candidates are often very focused on this because they want to make sure they include everything and they want to cover information. And I think that the way we talked with them about it can really have an influence. Okay, sorry, that's just a big, strong one for me. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. And then for the second half of TPE 4, I'm going to need somebody to jump in here and talk a little bit about what the focus was, because I came in towards the end, but it seemed like an equally rich discussion about, for me, I kind of saw that we were highlighting some of the TPEs that are obviously socially justice oriented, related to understanding students' cultural backgrounds for instructional planning purposes. But maybe somebody from that group could add a little bit more to that one as well.
It was interesting that one of the rubrics from the engagement, what was it? One of the earlier sessions was brought up that it was really applicable to this as well, to TPE 4, especially the relationship part of that rubric with the 3 R's, if anybody was in that session. Just talked about how important it is to do that up front, to get to know students, make them feel safe and comfortable and trusted, which also helps with behavior management. And all of those things, when you make them have a good start, kind of feeds into us being aware of their social and emotional place. So many of these things seem to overlap to me, which is good. We talked about I just looked at some of the, I remember TPE 4 because I used to like it because it had a lot of qualitative elements to it. It also has, things like rubrics, agendas, and I think that can fit into making students feel comfortable with kind of having anticipation for what's coming. And then it was also brought up that the how we can wrap in all the SEL, MTSS stuff into TPE 4, building into that part. There was something else I was really trying to remember to say. I'm looking at all these notes and I'm not remembering it.
I can add, Heidi.
Jump in. Yeah, add.
Hi, this is Jude. Thanks, Heidi, for leading us off. So I'm the special education representative for all these TPEs, and so I teach in the grad department in special ed, and so these are the same things that I teach with an eye towards the special education TPEs as well. However, as I teach my mild moderate support needs candidates about these TPEs, I really have an eye on collaboration for inclusion, especially if we've got these kids who are going to be in inclusion and collaborating with the general education counterparts. We talked a lot about, there was some confusion in our group around when these literacy expectations were to be implemented. And so we had spent a bit of our time earlier in that discussion and how that's being implemented. It's because obviously then in terms of planning and designing instruction, then that needs to be considered as well. And there was, in terms of student focus, the candidates' experiences tended to be more on curriculum lesson planning rather than getting to know the learners. So there needs to be an emphasis around that as well. I think that's it that I wanted to add on.
All right, great, thank you. Yeah, I agree. The literacy TPEs are kind of part of the problem is like they don't have numbers associated with them, and it's a bunch of text. So deciphering them and including them into our practice has been a challenge for us as well. Thanks for pointing those out. How about TPE 5?
Do you want to start, Lisa?
Happy to, thank you. We had a great conversation that led to a question of why we assess, what do we want to know, how does that get dealt with, and we were thinking about how TPEs and universal design don't fit seamlessly together and how we make room for more opportunities for students to show us what they know, and how do we branch out assessment so that we get more learners, more expression, more justice, because we have more understanding of who our students are, and they have spaces to build their competence and confidence in those expressions. And we also, I loved what Johnny said about assessment being a mirror into our teaching. You know, it's windows about students, but it's mirrors for us. And putting an emphasis on that makes more sense of it. But I do, and we also talked about a little bit about assessment is currently very tied to funding, and that has an impact on an entire institution. And so how do kids, not only do we make it a big scary monster, but then we show the monster's teeth, you know, and if we're not careful, then there's smoke, it gets bad. So, you know, out of the dragon's face. So how do we help distinguish that funding piece from what the learning might be? That was part of our conversation. Somebody want to climb on in there?
We could scroll
Wrangle
down.
that dragon?
If we could scroll down a little bit so we can see the rest of the entry. Thank you. A couple things. I so appreciated my colleagues in this conversation on the UDL part. Some of us come from the arts, and we think about in an art classroom how people represent their learning versus how many other classrooms you don't get to have that variety. And part of that also is assessment comes with such deficit perspectives, trying to find out what people don't know rather than what people are able to do. So that's one of an equity or justice perspective as well. So one of the thoughts also comes up when we think about this mirror on our teaching. One question is, what does our assessment look like to our students? What are we saying to our students by the ways we assess them? I'm going to throw out a big thought for everybody. And this just goes with TPAs, TPEs, and such. The same question sits with us as well. The ways we go about assessing our candidates as they progress in their teaching experience. What are we saying about our belief in them and what they're capable of doing too? And then the last thought, I threw this out there too, was just, you know, of the things that we think about in the TPEs, the assessment one's the most critical one to consider around power relationships, because assessment does so much damage, but it also has so much possibility. So, you know, if we're thinking about our candidates, helping them understand that relationship too, that's a worthwhile thing to wield in terms of growing students, but it also has its hazards too. So we had a good conversation.
Thank you. That's a very powerful last statement, Johnny. I really appreciate it. And then finally, one of my favorite TPEs, just because I think, speaking of power and you know, nuance, and I find TPE 6 to be really interesting, related to kind of professional attitudes and professional demeanor, as they're just defined by the candidate, the supervisor, the university. How about that group? Did they want to share anything that came away from this discussion?
Be happy to share what my point was, but I hope others will share their equally illuminating thoughts. My primary responsibility in my role as a supervisor is to help my candidates understand the diversity of learning styles, and that we don't necessarily just want to call on students who have the fastest hands, that there are kids out there who have deep thoughts but process information a little bit more deliberately and need more time. Plus, we have a whole group of students who may be on 504 plans or IEPs that can learn and learn meaningfully if provided with adaptations and modifications that meet their cognitive styles. So, you know, I think UDL offers promise within this realm because it looks upon just not only cognition and academic prowess, but also at effective means for communicating and learning. So I think it's very important that our candidates be willing to have a growth mindset and with respect to, you know, listening to recommendations that are provided and acting on those recommendations when they make sense. I also, and I know I'm taking too much time probably, but I think it's important to have a two-way conversation and have our student teachers, our candidates challenge our beliefs and our pedagogy and our strategies as well. That way we have this open conversation that's reciprocal and not just I know it all. I'm the bodhisattva and I'm going to provide all the information. You must listen. I don't want that kind of relationship. Thank you.
I think I can add in here is just one of the things we were talking about in regards to this particular TPE is how supporting and engaging both our students as well as those we work with in the community, in the schools, is how important the openness is, how important it is to be willing and able to consistently take in new information and look at our own biases as well as those of others around us, but really recognizing that this is a dispositional issue as much as anything else, because it's not I agree it's a great one to look at, but it's also sometimes really hard to truly measure. And so it becomes more of something that's internal in a lot of ways, and where our students, our teacher candidates, as well as those we're working with in the community, how we look at it as a more global issue of those dispositions and those willingness to take on new ideas. And but it's not something you can easily just check mark, just like, oh, they did that. It's something that's a little bit more global in that sense. And I know one of the things we talked about, and others can jump in here from the group, of course, but how important it is then as supervisors and faculty or anyone working with our teacher candidates, as well as those in the community, is that we continually model that, and that we're sharing with them how we're taking it forward and how we're looking at ways of engaging and supporting others, and looking at their internal biases as well, external, internal, the whole thing, and moving forward. But it's not as easy to just check it off in a box. Looks like Lisa has her hand up.
Lisa, raise her hand.
Thank you. I wanted to ask people's opinion about their understanding of TPE 6 in this way. I think of it as helping student candidates, teacher candidates, have a sense of advocacy for themselves. And maybe this is the wrong TPE for that, I don't know. But that the world of a school, the world of a classroom, the nuance, that how do we build teams? How do I find my allies? How do I sit down and write myself a teaching statement that allows me to deal with all of the audiences that are going to come from me as a teacher? And how am I going to prioritize my responses and keep my growth happening through that noise and ideally joy, all those things? Am I barking up the wrong TPE?
That was good.
Well, I think Lisa, that has a lot to do with that.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I just wanted to say that I think that connected nicely to what we were talking about in that modeling element, as well as showing, how to make those connections, how to take care of yourself, how to advocate when you need to, how, and that it's not automatic. I don't think it's automatic for some, it may feel that way, but I think that there needs to be some guidance in that area as well, obviously.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I'll wait.
Oh, yeah. We all are so impassioned over the TPE 6. I think it is for me, it's the most important one in terms of sustainability of the teaching of our troops, right? Or of our people in the industry. We're teaching, a lot of us have already, paid our dues, and we want to be able to sustain them and not burn them out. So I always come from a burnout prevention piece, which then helps them become more self-compassionate and not take things personally, because they often take things personally, and the collaboration piece around stakeholders, on and off campus is really important, and to be mindful of that. And I actually wonder where a lot of this compassion training comes, because this is where sort of my research is focusing on and trying to help prevent teacher burnout. So I'll be quiet. Thank you.
I'm seeing lots of hands, and this is great, by the way. Thank you everyone for sharing. And I want to acknowledge the people who have their hands up, but I'm also looking at the time. I know we only have a minute left before the 10-minute break. So we'll stick around after the 1:40 end time. For those of you who'd like to continue the conversation, great. For those of you who are going to continue on to your next session, great. I just want to leave you with a couple of questions to consider. We didn't get a chance to get to them today, so maybe treat this as food for thought. And I don't know if somebody is putting the slides back up. Hopefully they are, but hey, there we are. Here's the other questions that we had hoped to pose to you all. And again, this will just be some food for thought for you. So in what ways can we guide our candidates to engage with the TPEs through a more critical lens in order to cultivate social justice in their classrooms? And what are some questions, conversation starters specific to this TPE that you might use as you engage in debriefs, as you engage in pre-lesson meetings, and so on. So I'll leave this for all of you to consider, think about. Thank you so much, everyone, for the conversation. Very much enjoyed it. Lots of great stuff here today. If you'd like to stick around and keep the conversation going, hey, I think we'll be here. And for those of you who are going to take off, I hope you enjoy the rest of today. Hope to see you tomorrow, and hope we all can continue these great conversations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So anyone else care? I saw some hands up earlier. Anyone care to continue?
I do have a question. I'm assuming this is a special, general ed TPE. Do you guys talk to or look at the special ed TPEs as well, or not at all? Okay.
Not much. I'm not going to lie to you. It's more on, I've taught in the special ed program but for methods, and we almost do the opposite, where we kind of expose, we look at we compare and contrast, these are the TPEs, and then you also have these on top of them. So we talk to the special ed candidates about them, but no, that's definitely an area for growth. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, on both sides too, right? It's like the special ed teachers and collaboration and such, because that's kind of where we're headed. Thank you.
And Jude, just to underscore that for a minute, notice all the stuff from special ed in California Department of Education, how much of that, like RTI and all that stuff, flowed into general ed, and they have no idea.
Yeah, right. That's the thing.
That's but we have the toolbox.
Yeah, I teach the UDL piece, the RTI, the MTSS, and the adolescent literacy in my special education program. So, so that they can have the same vernacular when they're talking to you all. So, and all the strategies, right? And so we team teach, we collaborate, all of it. So all of the pedagogical approach with co-teaching, we teach, or I teach that. So, so I was just curious.
I'm not sure if this comment is particularly relevant to Jermaine. I sometimes have a concern that we present social justice as sort of another layer on top of the TPEs, as opposed to good teaching being an act of social justice, and that the TPEs properly understood are infused with social justice, that is being inclusive and being equitable and developing relationships and creating a caring community. And that when we present social justice as another thing student teachers need to be thinking about above and beyond, we we turn it into some sort of burdensome another checkbox, as opposed to an incorporation of what the act of education and teaching is, which in my mind is intended to be equity and social justice. I might be missing something here.
Would you like to call on one of us?
I think Lisa has been.
What you remind me of, and I appreciate you sharing your point of view, what you remind me of is the moment we're in. And you remind me of the moment we're in to review how we thought about that. And that maybe we weren't, well, not maybe, we weren't explicit enough. And so I don't think it's a question of us not feeling like teaching is social justice or not feeling that we've been inclusive, but we've got to forget double down. We're like hundo down, you know, like it's just not enough given how we've all been taught. Not only the frameworks and the paradigms of how we were lectured to and taught, but now that our audiences have changed and our technology has changed and our history is being dealt with, it's just needs to be more explicit, which is not to say it needs to stand out. It's how you deliver it that allows it to be the woven in. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Yeah, and as a person of color though, I think there's a lot more improvement around how we can, and as person in higher ed faculty, right? I mean, I inherit a lot of these things and there's not a stitch of social justice in it. And I mean, it's aspirational, Ted. I love it, yes. But in practice, it's missing.
Well, if I could just, I don't know, challenge your perspective a little bit, you know, what I've observed is some teachers sort of wearing social justice and equity badge and not attending to real core strategies of how to be actively inclusive and are passively exclusive, even in their deliverance of messages, overt messages of social justice, where they are not activating cognitive processing of what's going on for all students. And so, you know, we miss what's there and core to inclusivity, and instead sometimes wear the badge through verbalization, simple verbalization of it. And I might be, you know, essentializing some things, but you know, student teachers are so overwhelmed by all that they need to be considering. I think we miss what our most powerful means of social justice is when we don't really focus on what are the strategies of real active inclusion.